I want to see with my own eyes on a regular basis the pain that people are suffering. I don't want to just hear about it. I don't want to just read about it. I don't want to just see it online. I want to see it with my own eyes, and I want to look my constituents in the eyes and have them look me in the eye as their representative.
Senator Scott Wiener of California, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
California was the first state to order shelter in place for its residents. California Governor Newsom announced the relaxing of some of the shelter in place restrictions. Do you think this was the right decision, or is it too soon to reopen?
We all want to open up yesterday, but we also know that if we open up too quickly and if we're not responsible about it, then we could see an explosion of infections, which in addition to being destructive to people's health and more people dying, would also badly harm the economy. Because you could remove all of the restrictions tomorrow, but if people don't feel safe going out, then businesses aren't going to be viable and people won't have jobs. So we have to do it the right way.
Housing is notoriously expensive in San Francisco. One problem renters have been very vocal about is that while they are grateful for the eviction moratoriums, they are worried they will never be able to catch up on rent they've missed. What are you doing to address this?
We can't have a situation where, renters or, someone is hit with a, $5,000 back rent bill. It's like, okay, you have $5,000 you owe me, pay it right now, or I'm evicting you. So I'm co-authoring legislation with Assemblymember Phil Ting, which is Assembly Bill 828, that creates a strong eviction moratorium and then provides for the back rent. For renters will have 12 months to gradually pay it off. And during that 12-month period, their rent will be reduced 25% to make space for them to pay it off. And then at the end of 12 months, the renter is current and the rent will reset to what it was before.
One visual that will stick for a long time in our minds are the long lines, sometimes mile long, for food banks. You have spent time volunteering at one of your local food banks. What have you seen there?
Food access and food insecurity is a major focus for me. And I want to see with my own eyes on a regular basis the pain that people are suffering. I don't want to just hear about it. I don't want to just read about it. I don't want to just see it online. I want to see it with my own eyes, and I want to look my constituents in the eyes and have them look me in the eye as their representative. And so I have the number of times that I've volunteered at food banks in San Francisco and also in San Mateo County. It is extreme and heartbreaking. Some of the longest lines I've ever seen in my life. I volunteered at a food pantry, food bank pop-up in Visitation Valley in the southern part of San Francisco. It was at a park, and the line circled all the way around the park, the entirety of this large park on the sidewalk 3 times. And it was just, and as people would leave, it would be replenished. And so many people who I'm pretty confident have probably never asked for food assistance in their life. There's a lot of people who need food assistance who are ashamed. They have shame about it and they're embarrassed and they don't want to show up at a food bank line. And I try to convey to people, you do not be ashamed. You didn't create this situation. This was something that came upon us and you have been harmed, and there is help for you. And you can get groceries and healthy, produce. The food banks are now experiencing an explosion of demand and their food costs are going up. So we're trying to work in the legislature to get some more emergency funding to food banks, but it is a heartbreaking situation.
It truly is. This COVID-19 crisis is also having an impact on people's mental health. You have been advocating for a bill that will require insurers to pay more mental health costs. Tell us about your bill.
We just have pervasive, untreated mental health and addiction issues in our society, and those problems are now being exacerbated by COVID-19. So much stress, anxiety, depression, trauma with everything that's happening. And so we're going to really see fallout from that, and people who are in recovery for addiction falling out of recovery. So we've introduced Senate Bill 855, which will mandate that insurance companies cover all medically necessary mental health and addiction care. If your physician says this treatment is necessary medically for your mental health, you have a psychiatrist that's saying that, or an addiction specialist, that should be enough. And we don't want the insurance companies second guessing that critically important professional judgment.
You have been really pushing for information to be gathered around sexual orientation as part of the COVID-19 data collection. Why is that important?
We are not collecting data on health impacts of COVID-19 on LGBTQ people. And we are pretty confident that it is having disproportionate impacts because our community has higher rates of HIV, smoking, certain kinds of cancers, increased rates of homelessness, all risk factors. But the data is not being collected.
You've also been pushing for a change in blood plasma donation guidelines. We recently talked to former NBA star Jason Collins, who said that he was unable to help because of these guidelines, even though he tested positive for COVID-19 antibodies.
I'll disclose something. I'm turning 50 next week. I have not donated blood since I was a teenager. It's been 33, 34 years, because once I started, God forbid, having sex with other men, I was categorically excluded from giving. And it used to be a lifetime ban. In addition, they don't apply the same standard to straight people who are sexually active and potentially at risk. And the FDA has never, not once, even tried to articulate a rational scientific basis for this rule, because there's no scientific basis for it. And now with COVID-19, where it's not just blood that we need, but we need people's plasma for people like Jason who have recovered. And that could help save people's lives and make people recover more quickly.
Well, let me tell you, Senator, you don't look like you're a day over 30.
Thank you.
What gives you hope?
So much beauty in terms of the human spirit is coming out of this. And I think what we're seeing is people pulling together as communities. Speaking of like the food banks and all the food volunteering I do, they all have wait lists of volunteers now. People want to help. We are acknowledging that maybe in the rat race of life, we need to slow down a little bit. And we're acknowledging that we're all in this together, and that yes, maybe a social safety net is important. And then maybe we shouldn't just let people, descend into despair. And so I think that coming through this, we're going to be changed in a positive way as a society, where we're going to value those communal efforts and those communal supports more than we have in the past.
June is National Pride Month. What advice would you give to your 17-year-old self about the coming out process and the world that awaited you as a gay man?
I think the advice I would have retroactively given myself is just to be comfortable in your own skin. And I worry about young people during this pandemic, especially young people who aren't getting support at home and potentially even have neutral to hostile families, and they might be 15, 16, 17 years old, sheltering in place in that unsupportive environment, and where school was their outlet, where they had their friends, maybe they had a supportive teacher or guidance counselor, and they don't have that anymore. And and they may or may not be able to access it effectively digitally. And just for people to understand, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be good. Just be comfortable in your skin, be self-confident, and be optimistic that you're going to get to a better place.
That's really beautiful, and I think a great message for any teenager or anyone who's going through, a time that is very difficult for them as they are sheltering in place. Some people, it's so great that you said that, because some people are having a better time. They're getting closer to their family, thank goodness, and some are having a really tough time. Thank you so much for those words, and thank you for your time, Senator Scott Wiener. Really, really appreciate it. Be safe, be well. Thank you for everything that you're doing in your city.